Hello and welcome to our unique podcast, The Bombay Film Story. My name is Mayank Shekhar, and here we look at Bombay and films through the eyes of someone who is important to both. My special guest today is originally the Don of Hyderabad. But when you think of Bombay and when you think of films, at least there are three names that come to your mind for sure, and those three names are Ram, Gopal, and Varma. In short, RGV, Ramu. Ramu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ravi.
I mean, you prefer to be called Ramu or is it Ramuji? Everyone calls you Ramuji, right?
I like Ramu. It makes me feel young.
Ramu, this is going to be so much about Bombay and so much about cinema. But when it comes to Bombay, and of course, to a lot of people, you are a Hyderabad guy. To a lot of people in Hyderabad, you're probably a Bombay guy. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, you've moved bag and baggage to Goa. Which of these three is your favorite city? Which one is the one that you identify with the most?
I mean, to be frank, I'm not so much into places as such, it doesn't really make a difference to me. But I would like to believe, because Bombay is not about the place, it's about the varieties of people. Probably that is what I would like about Bombay, not so much about the city in particular, The kind of people I met in Bombay, they made a lot of difference to me in my life, in terms of the extremities in them, which you would not find neither in a place like Hyderabad nor Goa, actually. Yeah.
So tell me about the first time you moved to Bombay, Ramu. I'm pretty sure that wasn't like a move that would be similar to, say, Satya's coming out of VT station, because you were a pretty accomplished filmmaker by then. In any case, you'd made Shiva, more to say, like everyone pan India had seen Shiva by then. What was your first impression of Bombay? Who were these first people that you met when you came here?
When I actually came to Bombay, the first time I visited the place was around 86 or so, when I used to run a video library at that time. I haven't become a director yet, and I used to come to Mumbai to buy video cassettes. So I was like, I used to come in a bus to start with, okay, then stay in a small hotel somewhere in town, and then used to travel.
So where were you picking up the tapes? From Hirapanna?
It was in Grand Road. There was some wholesale suppliers, So, and then my first visit once, because I'm from out of town guy, they used to take me to this Fisherman's Wharf and Caesar Palace, these pickup joints. So that was my first ever taste of Mumbai, to say, But I used to be making very short trips, like probably a day, half a day, not more than that in terms of that, not really seeing the place. The first time I really saw Mumbai was like when I came for Rangeela. I shot Rangeela in Mumbai. So it was at that time I first had my first sight of Dharavi happened when I was making Rangeela, I was fascinated. I just couldn't believe that such a place can exist anywhere. And it looks seamless. It looks like there is no difference between whatever we can call shacks or whatever we call. And that kind of poverty has really struck me. And then when I said I go to these places, outside is very dirty, inside is very plush. Because of course the person had only decorated the interior part. That contrast is which really struck me. I've never seen something like that, for example, in Hyderabad. And then in the period when we were shooting the thing, that is when actually, whether it's the Bollywood people or like Sanjay Dutt or all of them, I used to keep meeting Shekhar Kapoor and all that, But even at that time, I would still say it is just a little better than when I used to come for video cassettes. First time it really hit me, Mumbai, is when I was actually wanting to make an action film. And those days, a lot of these newspaper reports used to come of some gangsters being caught with black cloth on their faces, and the police giving press conferences, putting the weapons, seals, things like that. And one thing which really struck me was the fact they looked like normal people, the arms thin, even though I couldn't see the faces because of the black cloth. So they don't look like typical cinema, how we filmmakers interpret how tough guys are going to look like in terms of their bodies or faces and all that. During the same time, in Rangeela producer or other people I know, I started meeting some guys, and at one particular meeting, and I was with Jammu Suvan, okay, and there was a gentleman sitting there. And we're all talking, and after some time he left and asked him who is he. He said, Chota Rajan ka shooter hai, Now he said it so casually. It took me some time to actually, did I hear that right? What did he say? Chota Rajan ka shooter? Because that guy looked more normal than anyone I know. Absolutely nothing about him. You will feel that there is something dangerous or X or Y or Z. That's because at that time, they're almost like a part of life. I don't really think it was the underworld as a word. It's not like what we perceive today, post 93 serial blasts and all that, And then almost they used to treat them with respect, treat them with, and like any normal, absolutely no difference. But then what happened when Gulshan Kumar was assassinated? At that time, Satya was not really Satya in my mind at the time that happened, Obviously, I know him, I met him quite a few times, and I was quite shocked. And at the time, Jamsudan said I was supposed to meet him at 9:30, he woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And as he was talking, it suddenly struck me, we always hear about them, the gangsters, either when they kill or when they die in a police shootout. What do they do in between? So if Gulshan Kumar woke up at 7, what time did the killer wake up? Which means he must be having a house. If he has a house, he must be having a family. The guy who could be walking on the road could be a gangster, belong to D Company, but I don't know because they're not going to stick out like a sore thumb, is the point, So that is when again shifted my attention to the people. Okay. Then I also started meeting cops in the same time because the encounter cops were there all over the place because of the high activity of the underworld at that time. Okay. Now when I talk to them, I don't see a fundamental difference between the way they think or the so-called gangster things. And then I was getting fascinated, really. Then I also understood the way Mumbai is, whether it's the Dharavi or to thing, and there is so much of complex aspect to it. It is impossible for anyone to really put a structure to it. So the mindsets almost were reminiscent of how the city is. It almost looks like because they're born in a place like that, they become like that. It is like that. That's where I find a connection.
And of course, we'll talk about Satya in greater detail at some point in this conversation. The part I'm most interested in is you as a movie buff, Ramu. When you moved to Bombay, had you moved to Bombay when you were making Rangeela? You had a home here? No.
I used to treat it as an outdoor, and but I took a flat there and I used to stay there, but not like I've not moved in and I've not moved out of Hyderabad. Yeah. But I used to stay for extended periods of time. Yeah.
So when you came to this city with its thriving show business, you're a movie guy, you've watched everything that there is to watch that has come out of Bombay in many, many years. Say the first time that you meet these movie stars or you meet the directors you've loved. What was that like? Do you have any memory of the first time somebody came up to you and said, hey man, my name is Sanjay Dutt, and you're like, oh man, Sanjay Dutt knows me. Did you have that movie buff moment at all?
Maybe with Mr. Bachchan. Because see, I've always thought of only Mr. Bachchan as a star. The reason being, I stood in line and bought tickets for him. So that is what for me is the definition of stardom. Otherwise, I don't think I was really awed by anyone else in the context of that. So except for Mr. Bachchan and Sridevi, I can't really recall anyone that I was floored that I'm actually meeting this man. With the exception of also Mr. Adi Burma. Because again, I was a huge fan of his, yeah. I would say more or less. And then I first met Shekhar Kapoor in Boni Kapoor's office. I was also idolizing him because I was a really big fan of Masoom and Mr. India. It was Shekhar who introduced Sanjay Dutt to me in Ajanta Theatre, first time. Yeah.
I mean, you and Mani Ratnam and Shekhar Kapoor eventually even started a company, right? I mean, that was what we'd read back in the day. Did you have ideas that did not work out? What happened there?
See, those days, this whole thing was just then coming, like UTV and like we were hearing the words corporate here and there, like ABCL and all that. And it was Shekhar Kapoor's bright idea that we all come together and start a company between three of us. And we initially were very excited, but later on in the context of we speaking, I one day told both of them, see, we right now are friends, we don't need each other. We make our own kinds of films, what I like, Mani makes what he likes, and Shekhar does. The moment we three are together, I think there are going to be differences between us because our tastes like me, just like that saying, and you not agreeing is okay. But if you both have a combined interest in the same project, I think it's not going to work. Creative people together, I do not believe they can. So I said, I make 5 films in 1 year. Shekhar Kapoor makes 1 in 10 years, and Mani makes 1 in 3 years. I think even the output is going to create a problem. So I kind of put cold water on it. But since you already announced it, we thought we'd just go with Dil Se. Make it happen with Dil Se and not continue after that, which is what happened. And having said that, it was mostly neither mine or Shekhar's money was involved, nor the creative was involved. Basically, it's money's thing. It was just for namesake or names were there.
Was Rangeela, because it is the first film that you made in Bombay, in a certain sense, a tribute to the city because, it is about show business, it is about Bollywood, and you would have been fascinated with the world except you were a complete outsider to it. Did you put in a lot of stuff that you saw right then into the film in terms of when you were shooting it or when you were writing it?
I don't think Bombay as a city was really at the top of my head when I was doing Rangeela. And Rangeela kind of a story I would like to believe which could have worked anywhere in terms of the context. Whether yes, the film industry background is there, but that probably in Tollywood or Collywood or whichever would. So the city as such did not play that much of an importance in my head where I was where I was placing the story compared to, let's say, Satya.
But because you're in Bombay, let's say you met, say, Shah Rukh Khan in his house and you see him playing video game, would you incorporate that into Jackie Shroff's character in the movie? Like some things that you observe, would you put that? Was there anything that you saw that you put in the film?
Not really. For me, the inspiration for Jackie's character was more, my fundamental inspiration for Rangeela was the sound of music. And I felt there's certain thing when I first came to meet Jackie, Jackie has a very strange kind of a behavior. He sits in the darkness in the office, or he will be wearing a lungi and a flashy jacket on top. So that eccentricity of Jackie in person is what I took it in the character also to an extent. But that's not really because, in fact, at Rangeela time, I haven't met Shah Rukh at all at that time. I met him post Rangeela.
You were supposed to do a film with him at some point, right? What was that film about that did not get made?
See, that film actually, it was something related to a time machine, the story-wise. Why it didn't happen is because when I was meeting him, now there are two kinds of actors, like one like Shah Rukh, where you can design a kind of a cinematic aspect around a particular actor. I think the height of that is Mr. Bachchan, which is what I would think it suits me, Shah Rukh is a performer. To stifle him and to control him and to design him to do in a certain way, I don't think it suits his personality. I started realizing that when we were having discussions on the script. I just felt finally I just have to put the camera and leave him alone to perform. So there's nothing for me to do as a director. I didn't think I would be enjoying doing that in spite of his superstardom. And second is I also felt it was doing injustice to, not to put down the film or think that is. I would think what Ashutosh made him did that, Swades. Now, Swades is a kind of film where I feel an actor with the energy level of Shah Rukh Khan gets stifled, and you can see that happening in the film. I would have done a worse job than that if I made a film with Shah Rukh. Yeah.
But was this time machine similar to the one that Shekhar Kapoor was making with Amir Khan?
No, not at all. Not.
Ramu, I should also let listeners know, and I don't know whether you remember yourself. I think my favorite and my fondest memory of hanging out with you is actually in Warsaw many, many years ago. We were getting a drink at a bar in Warsaw, and we get done with the drinks, the bar is shutting down. You suggest let's get one for the road, and you say let's go to your office, which I found pretty odd because who goes to their office at 1:30 at night? And then we, of course, reach your office at 1:30 or maybe 2 at the time. And your office is packed with aspirants. There are just people lined up on both sides. There are people sitting with box guitars. There's somebody else who's hoping to be, you might just show up at night is probably the reason why the aspiring actor is sitting there. You may not show up, but he'll still be sitting. You had a crazy life at that time when you were living in Bombay with all kinds of people surrounding you. I knew that one guy who used to stand in the divider where you used to take a U-turn just in case you can spot him. Can you remember some crazy things that have happened to you around that time when everyone wanted to be noticed by you?
See, I think the difference between then and now, see, today because of the WhatsApp and the various ways one can reach, that all happens online now. At that time, there are two things. One is in factory, they were making multiple films, At least 4 to 5 productions used to happen parallelly to each other, and that explains why so many people were there in the office at that time. And this particular place where we were having a drink, now that is a hub of all these so-called, strugglers, So obviously if you're walking on the road, they're bound to see you, yeah.
But were there crazy things that happened to you in terms of someone just showing up? Maybe, I remember there's one story of Mahesh Bhatt where someone showed up in his office and set himself on fire or stuff like that. There can be a lot of Looney Tunes in that area too. Do you remember any stories of that nature?
One thing which happened is when I was inside the office, and one of my office people came to me very worriedly, and he said, there is this one actor who just want to meet you. And he happened to be standing just a little away from the office, and he overheard those guys in a car talking, and they're waiting for me to come out to shoot me. Okay, so he gave that information to my guy who came and told me, so they called the police. And by the time that car apparently drove, okay, so they took this guy, whoever said that, and they questioned him. And after that, the inspector called me and said, "Sir, he's just an aspiring actor. He made up this story to come close to you." This is one. And second, I got a message saying that I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm making a film on the 6 of the top filmmakers in the country, and he took some very, very, very big names and added me also. And so I said, okay, come, let's talk about it. And then he came. And said, so what's it about? I asked him. He kept looking here and there. He said, what's it about? He said, sorry, sir, I'm right, sir. I'm an actor. No, no one is letting me meet you, so I said, And yeah, there's a lot of these things happen.
I mean, another reason, of course, technology has changed and people can actually send images and stuff online and videos and things like that. But another reason why it would happen to you and no one else is because you were that one person known to constantly cast new actors, constantly give break to new directors, untested directors. I mean, Rajpal Yadav has been a lead actor in a Ram Gopal Varma film. I mean, that's as much aspiration as anyone can have in that sense, which is a great film in case our viewers, our listeners have not seen it. Main Madhuri Dixit banna chahti hu. Are there stories on the reverse where you randomly spotted someone on the street perhaps, or given the job of filmmaking to someone who does something completely different? Because that's also a chance that you've taken, which is the reason why there's a crowd around you in the first place.
Yes. For example, this guy Vishram Sawant who did D, the director D, he has absolutely no connection to the film. He's an interior decorator, But he has this very weird kind of thought process in terms of and the way he does interior. It is something no one can expect. So I just felt, for me, because of my experience of so many years, I don't look at a director the way normally people think what a director does, in terms of that. If there is a script, if there is actors know the role, I believe that anyone can direct, because direction is also about editing. What can be controlled in the edit when no one can go beyond the script. I thought he might give it a visual thing which probably no one will be able to think of, So in other words, is that. And second, I gave E. Nivas, who's director Shul, he was like my office boy. Literally is my office boy, and so I just was, on one hand you can call it arrogance, but I basically believe that when people choose a job, like the best editor probably will be paid some 10 lakhs. The best director will get 10 crores. Okay. So why would the editor want to choose? I don't think he ever consciously would have thought that I don't have it in me to become a director, become an editor. At the time they make the decision, they just like that make it. I don't think it's more than that. Just on that spur of the moment or whatever it is called. So I know of cases where so many people are there who become like production boys, who become big producers in X and Y, including Ashok Mehta, the DOP. So on that kind of an impulse, I see an attitude in a person, and I kind of like it, and that's how I made him. So likewise, As an actor, a lot of people when I introduced, I did not see what they did or what they didn't do. I picked up actors from restaurants, for example.
Who did you see at the restaurant?
Abhimanyu Singh, and I cast him in Rapta Charitra. Yeah. But he happened to be acting. I didn't know that he was an actor. But likewise, quite a few people I did.
That's bizarre. But even in terms of the casting that you did, and that's another reason why that crowd in your office. And again, that's my theory that something happened late 90s. There were people who came from outside Bombay and they began to dominate Bollywood. And in a certain sense, the beginning or the starting point was Satya. If not just in terms of how great that film was, but also in terms of the number of young people who were attached to that film who went on to do greater things on their own. So, for instance, you take someone like an Anurag Kashyap, the writer, or you take someone like a Vishal Bharadwaj, who was the music composer. Now, you were making, for instance, let's take Vishal, you were making Satya after Rangeela, you'd work with Rahman. Would you not want to do another soundtrack with Rahman? I mean, wouldn't that be the obvious thing for you to go for?
There are two reasons. See, one is I'm a very impatient person. I just don't have patience. And you require a lot of patience to work with Rahman. That is one reason. And second, at a point of time, Rahman, I feel changed a lot. I'm not saying for the better or less, but change I'm talking about, Because he used to have that very bright quality in him in terms of the unexpected. I mean, it's very commercial, at the same time there's something. But I feel lately in the last few years it's become very serious and I don't know what word to use. So in fact, that kind of a music I cannot connect to on my sensibility. Yeah, that's one reason. And second reason, like I said, I don't have the patience to it because you need enormous amount of patience. I'll give you an example. When I was doing Rangeela for the composition of Hairama song, I took him to Goa. So I was in one cottage, he was in another cottage. And after the first day is over, he said, Ram, I'm just working on it, give me another day. Second day was over. And then third day he said, it is just there, I just am fine-tuning it. And having these kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 days which he gave me for the composing, they got over. And en route to the airport, he said, Ramu, next time we go, please don't put me in any room where there's a TV, because all 4 days I was only watching TV. He said, I want to kill him. I want to bloody throw him out of the car, But that's Rahman. You have no choice but to take him. Probably at that point of time, I had that patience, but not anymore. Yeah.
But you took him to Goa essentially to inspire him in terms of the location, would give him...
Those days mostly, it was a kind of a tradition. Whenever you want composition, people used to go to some other place, like for a story singing or for music composing. That was quite a done thing at that time. Even they would prefer that to get away from wherever they are and probably finish this work. All the big composers used to do that.
How did you and Vishal Bharadwaj meet then for Satya?
Vishal, I met him because I really loved that song, Chappa Chappa, Machis. That's the first time I heard his music. I think that's the first music he has done. And I met him during that time, I think at Subhash Guy's brother's place. I mean, he was doing music for him. And then Jammu Sulan's brother also knew him quite well. But mainly I took him for Satya because of Machis music.
But in terms of casting also, I mean, again, it's also a seminal piece of work because people who were in that film later on, especially like 10 to 15 years later when cinema itself changed, they became great actors in their own right while they probably had smaller parts in Satya. Were these people that you'd noticed in Bandit Queen? Were they all an alumni of Bandit Queen, a film that you'd love?
Not all of them. See, Manoj, yes. Manoj, I noticed him in Bandit Queen. I didn't notice Saurabh, though he was there in Bandit Queen, he didn't make much of an impression. Saurabh, I noticed him in Israt Ki Subhani. Chandran, I saw him in a play, a Gujarati play. Somewhere Neeraj Vora took me to see a play, and that's where I picked him up from. And Aditya Srivastava also, I didn't really notice him in Bandit Queen, but later I was told by one of my students he's there. So I think each of them were here. Whereas Raju, that guy, Guru Narayan, he was a producer actually. He has no acting experience before.
The one person who still frightens me from that film is the guy who says, "Abhi drink banana sikha hoega." I don't know if you remember that guy with the yellowish eyes. Where did you pick him up from?
Shiva, yeah. So that guy is an actor from South. He's a Telugu actor, actually, yeah. So they have that kind of accent, accent is very, very, very funny, yeah. And the other guy with the long hair, the film opens with him shooting, he's actually a journalist. He's a reporter and he used to work with Khalid Mohammed.
And what, you just saw him like hanging with him?
Yeah, I liked his skin presence. I thought he had this long hair and that dark complexion. For that reason, I cast him. He's not an actor.
Yeah, I don't think he's acted in films thereafter either. That's right. In terms of characters, of course, and you've said this before, that each and every character in Satya was modeled on some gangster I had met or some gangster I'd heard of, or sometimes on people I knew, not necessarily from the underworld. All in all, every character in Satya had a reference point. Now, there is one character, or at least the main character, that's Bhiku Matre, and I asked Sanjay Dutt about it once, whether there was somebody like Bhiku Matre who was a prison inmate, someone he'd shared time with in jail. And he said that he told you about him. Do you remember this story, Ramu?
Because I spoke to Sanjay quite a lot about various characters from the underworld, but this particular character I got inspired from a guy called Ajit Divani, who was killed much later. He used to be secretary to Aftab and Manisha Koirala, and actually started his career with Mandakini's secretary, which is when he got to know many of the underworld guys. He told me of a guy who's a gangster who was killed by the police, and his brother was also a gangster. So he said when he went to see him, and the brother was giving galis to him, so he was just continuously cursing the dead body. You know? And that created a kind of a strange feeling in me, that to see a man giving galis to a dead body, now that's what I thought a gangster would do. Out of his ego, he can't believe that he couldn't save his brother, and it's the grief is coming out like anger. For me, that actually was the fundamental soul of Bhiku Matre. Then the same Ajit Divani told me, once he was going with the Tiger Memon and all these guys, and the Tiger Memon wanted to have one of these pakodis, I don't know, whatever they make in the thing, and that place was closed. So at gunpoint, they got him to open it and make those things for them. Now that is very funny and very very buddy kind of a scene, with the exception of the gun point. So I wanted to have a mix of this and that. That is how the Bhiku Matre was designed.
Did Sanjay Dutt not tell you about someone who he shared space with in jail? Like, did he tell you some stories?
I mean, he told me quite a few stories, and see, the point is not like it's a very rare thing like that to happen, because gangsters are eventually human beings, and a lot of people will be similar. But my vivid memory of Bhiku Matre is only Ajit Divani.
I should also let the listeners know that I was reading a passage actually from Ramu's book that's called Guns and Thighs. Does not surprise me at all. That's the name of the title of your book, and besides a few gangsters, it's dedicated to Ayn Rand, Urmila Matondkar, Bruce Lee, Amitabh Bachchan, Mad Magazine, and porn star Tory Black. Why have you dedicated your memoir, your autobiography, to a porn star, Ramu?
Yeah, I see. Everyone who made some kind of an impact on me, or gave me some kind of happiness, or made a certain impression on my thinking, I think all those names were there, and I can't ignore her, because she gave me a lot of happiness for being there. Yeah. In fact, I also put Dawood Ibrahim's name, and the publishers took it out.
So that's among the few gangsters.
I owe my living to Dawood Ibrahim, because without him, there's no D Company. Without D Company, there's no gangster films I could have made. Yeah.
But are you telling me that if there was no D Company, you would not be inspired to make gangster films? I mean, you would, right? You could have set it elsewhere. You could have.
No. I don't think so. Because see, the uniqueness of D Company. See, why is it called a company? First of all, it is like. There were street gangs. There were always street gangs, the Patan gangs of Aurangzeb and those guys. And in early times, Haji Mastan, Vardabai. Now, Dawood Ibrahim got in a certain structure to it, certain way of functioning, and which is the reason people start calling it company. The company as a word never existed before Dawood Ibrahim came. So I did so much of research on that in the course of all these years. So I think my understanding of underworld is because of D company. It wouldn't have come from Arun Gaudi, for example. It wouldn't have come from Amar Nayak. There is something very specifically designed aspect of Dawood Ibrahim's company. Yeah.
Did you ever get a call from Dawood?
You are going to get me arrested now. To be very honest, only once I spoke to him for a very brief time, but I can't tell for sure because the man who was talking to me said, Dawood bhai se baat karo. So I have no way of knowing whether that is Dawood or they were pulling a fast one on me. And the conversation was very, very normal in terms of kaise yahan pe this. There's nothing more than that. It's hardly happened for some 20 seconds, I think. But like I said, I want to reiterate once again. I can't be knowing because first of all, he's such a significant guy. I wouldn't believe that he just like that talks to you.
It's you've made a, almost like at least the underworld cinema genre career out of a man who obviously has also benefited hugely because he's remained in public imagination all these years largely because of films. It's not like he actually goes out and does press conferences. It's not like he actually goes out and does anything that you want to even know about. You're actually his press agent in almost in certain way, right? He owes it to you, doesn't he? Like, have other people reached out to you, people from around him, or have cops reached out to you telling you that, you know what, this is what he said?
It's like the seed first or the tree first theory. You know, because the entire media is so obsessed with him is why I started researching him. I don't think it's the other way around. If you look at it, the number of times he appeared on Discover page or whatever, every once in a while they keep on telling some news without the brand coming. There are two main reasons for that. One is the mystery, because it doesn't talk, no picture of his came out in the last 30 years. You know? And technically, he has not done a single crime post 1986. A lot of people don't realize it. His actual crime period was very short. You know? But D company is different. First of all, D company is not a registered company. You know, it is just a name which is given by the media because of the uniqueness of his operation. So under D company's name, there were a lot of people. Like if you look at the extreme criminal activity which happened between 97 and 2004, post Gulshan Kumar's killing and the split between Dawood Ibrahim and Chota Rajan, all that area, Dawood Ibrahim was not there. There's not a single case which was registered on him or it was told on him. It was all associates of him at some point, like Chota Shakil or Abu Salam, all these guys, you know. So in that context, what I'm trying to say, D company is very different from Dawood Ibrahim. Only because he started the founder member, you know, but it is not underworld story of Mumbai, nothing to do with Dawood Ibrahim.
And you've also said at some point in your book that you've always wanted to be a gangster. It's something that you wanted to be, except that you're mentally probably one, but physically it's going to be very hard for you to. Is that true, or is that one of those things that you say, Ramu?
A lot of people say, including JD used to tell me, company, if you didn't become a director, you would have become a gangster for sure. I say no, because see, I am like a naturalist. I love to study wild animals. Wanting to study a king cobra or a tiger doesn't make you that animal. So there is a fundamental difference there. And I don't think I have the mental aptitude or the emotional concentration to become a gangster. The gangsters are very, very emotional people, unlike what people think. They're not cold-blooded or like the way we imagine. I said I won't be able to become a gangster, but I can be a very big, good consultant. If anyone wants to start a new gang, I can take my fee and not do any crime.
So that essentially makes you Satya, right? In a real sense, a person who is advising the main guy how you love creating conflict in your work environment and that you play off politics, and that's not very different from what happens in an office, is not very different from what happens in the underworld. Take us through exactly what games you play, Ramu.
Whenever you look at a person who makes an impression on you, if you ask me to name 3 or 4 people, one is Michael Corleone in Godfather. And second guy is Howard Rock in Fountainhead. And Amitabh Bachchan in his 70s angry young man films like a Diwar or a Shakti. You know? Likewise, there were 4 or 5 people who always became a benchmark for me. Like Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon, for example. Okay. I am sure some of those traits rubbed off on me because whoever makes an impression on you, subconsciously you start following that kind of a behavior or that kind of a thought process, especially in your growing years, you tend to get influenced by that. So my very first thought of Satya's character of Chakravarti was to put Howard Rock in the underworld, where he talks reason. Like Biko Matra is a very emotional guy. Chakravarti is very like cold-blooded, and he only talks reason and logic till the point of time he falls in love with Urmila. And the moment he gets into emotion, he gets finished. You know, I always felt that even about Dawood Ibrahim. Dawood Ibrahim, I almost think is like a Howard Rock in the gangster world. You know, and so I definitely, that is true. That one part. Then the politics happening. Politics, I think, more or less everywhere they are the same. Whether it's in our office or whether it is in the government or in the police or in some business, like legitimate business rivalry, I don't think human beings are same. And human beings, by definition, are prone to conflict. So there won't be that much of a difference in the underworld. A normal company, you'll be fired from the job, and there they'll be literally fired.
What I was getting at is you playing the games, you enjoying the process of pitting one guy against another, and to see how that plans out, almost like a big boss.
I do that because I am a very emotionless person, and I like to play almost like you're watching like a National Geographic cameraman. You're just liking the drama which is being played by this different wild beasts. And I definitely used to be very amused doing that, yeah.
So are you telling me you'll say something to someone and then say something to someone else and see how that pans out? Because it's almost like you are the puppeteer and watching these people and their politics play out and seeking some pleasure out of it, like a big boss guy?
Not in context of where they will get hurt or where they will get lose something. In fact, I used to tell them immediately after I do that. Like it was me who actually played that up, yeah.
So it's above a prank and less than something that would hurt.
Yes. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Coming back to Bombay, Ramu, defining films, one that looks at showbiz, that's Rangeela, another that looks at crime, that's Satya, another that looks at international crime, that would be Company. In fact, it's more outside Bombay as much as it is inside Bombay. And of course, Sarkar, that looks at politics. But if I were to pick the one Bombay film from the lot that you've done, ironically, it would be Bhoot for me. And that's because that's the life everyone lives. They actually live inside apartments. They're not always in Dharavi. And they live in very close spaces. And that can freak you out if there is a ghost. I want the listeners to know this story. And I don't know, Ramu, if you remember this. But I actually went to that building where you shot Bhoot. Okay. And I was waiting. So we were going to do a story on that building. On the floor that you had shot it. But, you know, I was waiting for the cameraman, the photographer to show up. The lift door opened and there was a guy, like a Nepali person who was the lift man. And I said, you know, I'm not going to use it right now because I had pressed the button where my friend is coming and then I'll go up. And right when my cameraman showed up, the photographer showed up, there's another lift that opened and it was the same guy in the other lift. Exactly 5 seconds later. I know this cannot be true, but it was true because, you know, it was happening in that building. Then we go up and in the room, the flat number that you had shot, actually somebody had died. Somebody had committed suicide from that same flat. I mean, these things cannot be planned. Firstly, are you somebody who believes in ghosts? And if you're emotionless, I would like to believe that you don't, because emotionless is emotionless.
But first of all, see, that's untrue about someone committing suicide from the same flat. That didn't happen.
No, not the same flat where you shot. The number in that building, somebody had committed suicide. And just to let everybody know, the two liftmen were actually twins. And they used to operate from the same building. How did you come about with Bhoot, Ramu?
See, I actually want to make a horror film. And I sent a team, like a DOP and one of my assistants, to get some pictures of a place somewhere near Dehradun, like a haunted house on a hill or something. When they got the pictures back, I was looking at them and I said, I mean, they're nice, but they just seem too predictable. I've seen so many films with this kind of an imagery, like fog in the foreground and there's one creepy looking house in the background that's coming from Woe County Times. You know, I'm not very sure this location is correct. Then one guy suggested that, so what if you do it in Goa, in a beach, because you don't see oceans in a horror film. It's always about darkness and forts and all that. I said, I like that because it's unexpected. So as long as we do complete unexpected, then let's go even further and shoot in Bombay City. in an apartment. So that is the last thing people will expect, where they will feel safe. No one in the theater, they go to a haunted hill all the time or somewhere else, some deserted place. What if it happens in the middle of people where people live, So that is what actually the first thought of doing it. And once we shot it, till today, that flat is not sold. No one wants to buy that flat. So I just made the property value zero by making that film.
Also, it might well be the first Indian horror film with a proper leading man who's a star at the time. I don't think anyone used to spend on casting more well-known actors for horror films, because I guess our first association with horror movies would be Ramsey Brothers, and they had their own cast, and all those same guys that appeared. Was that a conscious call, Ramu, that you just had these?
Very initially, when because I became very close to Ajay when we made company. So in the context of that, when I actually initially approached Abhishek for this role. Abhishek had some date issues, and he was also not very sure about this is the kind of film he wants to do at that stage and all that. When I spoke to Ajay said, one thing for me as a director, to see fear in the eyes of an action hero is a big thing, because that is going to really scare the audience. Ajay, they won't go that like that. That is looking at it one point. On the other side, they might get turned off. How can Ajay then be scared? And I thought he will be not very comfortable in showing extreme fear, considering his image as an action hero, and he's the guy who will come and solve things, and he can't be scared of some ghost. But Ajay was very, very much up to it. He said, "No, just forget that, and I want to do it with complete conviction. I'll do it." So that's what happened. Yeah, casting wise, Then of course all the other actors too, like Rekhaji and yeah.
Again, back to your book, actually, one of the things that struck me about your book, of course, it's very well written in terms of it's very conversational. It almost feels like I'm talking to you when I'm reading that book, and that's a lovely way to actually read someone's story. But, when it comes to films, you go back quite often to Ram Gopal Varma Ki Aag. There's a lot of reference to that film, almost as if that's the only film that you made that either you did not like or people did not like. Why the obsession with Ram Gopal Varma Ki Aag? I mean, what is so bad about that film? I'm sure you made...
It's because of Sholay, not because of anything else. Because I revere Sholay so much in my entire life. I probably would put it again at the top of all the films I've seen. I know your views on it. I read your review when you released it in recent times. So I think taking something I revered so much and could do a job like that, I think it just weighs on me. That doesn't mean that I regret it. I don't mean that, but it weighs on my head, And also for me, there's like one of the greatest experiences I had in terms of I understood how films get made or unmade, or why they would turn out to be what they are from the inception of the film. In the process, the loss in translation, for what reasons it can happen, it's been a great experience for me to understand that. That again is benchmarking me to Sholay.
So there is Sholay, that's a huge benchmark for you. The other benchmark for you has been The Godfather. And as you mentioned in the book, much more the book than the film. You based Sarkar far more on Puzo's book, the novel, rather than Coppola's film and its trilogy. But you also, again, completely based it on Bombay. Do you think you would have made Sarkar if there was no Bal Thackeray?
No. Because see, for me, like you mentioned, the book and the film, there was a difference. I found the book far more intense and far more arresting compared to the film. Whereas I felt the book had a strong resonance with Balasaheb Thackeray. From whatever I heard of him, inside stories and the way he came up and the way he deals with the people and all that. And I never thought of Godfather as a gangster film. I never thought of it as a gangster at that point of time was to do with smuggling or whatever various businesses underworld do. In fact, if you look at Godfather, there not a single time they showed what he does actually, what the gangsters do. Not a single scene is there. Whereas I thought a person who's working outside the establishment, who's outside stuff, but he seems to be in control of this, and that's about power. That's about political power. That's about power which is coming from the people's love or respect for him. There I found a parallel with Balasaheb Thackeray and Godfather, So then I thought, my idea of the book, I tried to catch that pitch and put Amitabh Bachchan in Balasaheb Thackeray's place. Balasaheb Thackeray kind of a person, I could never find a parallel to that in South India. In small pockets they might exist. In one village here, in some place there, but an entire city as large as Mumbai could be controlled by just one man. That I don't think it ever happened. Yeah.
But were you apprehensive at the time that you were conceptualizing the film, given the power that Bal Thackeray had in Bombay, the sort of power he commanded? What can you get away with? If you piss him off, there is just no question of you living in the vicinity of Maharashtra in a certain way.
There are 2 points here. One is the man who's playing is Amitabh Bachchan. And Balasaheb Thackeray is known as a hero, especially in 2005 when it has come. People were almost like scared to say anything about Balasaheb Thackeray, and nobody will think putting Amitabh Bachchan in the lead role and I will show Balasaheb Thackeray in a negative way. I don't think anyone would have believed that also. So I never thought that can be a problem. In fact, unlike a lot of media reported that Balasaheb demanded that he is shown the film how he's being portrayed, that's not true. I myself went along with Raj Thackeray and invited him to see the film 3-4 days before the release. And he came out and he hugged me and getting into the car. And that was like an endorsement. After that, he actually started growing a beard like Amitabh Bachchan. So that's also the point. Say, right now I'm making a film on Dawood Ibrahim. A lot of people say, how can you straight call him Dawood Ibrahim? See, Underworld is a business organization. They're not a terror organization where there's a certain ideology or something to gain or whatever. And any which way the media or the people think of them as gangsters. And when they see a Satya and company, they know that I show them as people. I'm not taking judgment, I'm not taking sides, or I'm not being judgmental about who's what. I'm telling the story of what happened in between them as people, and they would love it. They'll be the first guys to love it.
But what if you show a crime that they've not been convicted of, and you're showing them, and in that sense, it's almost a confirmation of a crime involving anyone if you're calling them by their name? Could that be an issue?
See, there are 2 things there. Someone who's absconding from the law, somebody who's been convicted, they cannot have that right because they can't take the help of the same legal system and they themselves are not abiding by it. Second point is, I'm also basing it on a lot of information which is out there in the public domain. Who will want to move against it? They have no reason to move against it. So these are the 3 factors which I don't believe will be a problem. Most of the times when filmmakers say that I got a call from there, iska naam change karo, uska naam change karo, this will be mostly people who just make a prank call from a different SIM card. The actual big guys, they don't care.
You think they're going to be happy about it? The fact that they are anyway out there in yet another domain?
Every human being will be happy when someone is making film. Without exception, yeah.
Ravu, there is a film that's going to be on you, if I'm not mistaken, if I heard right, and it will be on Ram Gopal Varma, the person, the filmmaker. I'm presuming there'll be elements of that. If you had to pick that one great story to tell in that film, what would be your favorite Bombay story and your favorite film-related story involving people that you would want to see on screen?
I would like to believe the time period when I was making Satya. Behind the scene, not about the making of the film, but what I went through. There were so many aspects of my life which are happening parallelly in the making of Satya. My personal life, my professional life, and the kind of people I met, both in the underworld and in the gangsters, of course, the producers and all the big shots who were. So I think that journey for me between 95 to 19. Those 3 years, I think, is one of the most, memorable experience of mine. I would like to make something like that.
When you look back at your career, especially when it comes to cinema and this city, do you have any regrets, Ramu? Is there something that you would have, I don't mean regrets in a way of feeling bad about it, but something that you would have changed, done differently in terms of films, in terms of being here, in terms of the stuff that you did or would want to do differently now?
I would like to believe I don't regret the film, but I regret what I made the actors go through in the making of art. So they all had to suffer along with me, Like, in fact, many times I apologize publicly on that. So I would like to believe that when you are a part of something, and any filmmaker, when actors or crew members trust you, that you know what you are doing about, I felt that I let them down. I am okay with people saying anything about me or the film. With the exception of that, I can't really believe, I can't recall anything where I really regret something I've done.
Ram Gopal Varma, always a pleasure chatting with you. I really hope to have you actually again back on this show. There's just too many other things that we could talk about. This was only about cinema. Thank you so much, Ramu, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Yeah.
Subscribe to Midday India. Get direct notifications on all our videos by clicking on the bell icon.